Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan, and we are back previewing a Week 3 matchup. The Giants are visiting the Cleveland Browns on Sunday at 1 o'clock for what hopes to be the first win of the season. And here we are on getting ready for a weekend of football. We're getting into better matchups for college football. It's a whole. This is when football really feels like it hits its stride. How you doing, Cranky Fan?
I'm ready for a football game. I'm ready to watch two really bad teams potentially lose. So I'm in full football mode right now, Grump. I am
Mid-season form.
I'm in mid-season crank at this moment. I'm
Mid-season crank doesn't work the way you think it does.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I'll be home this weekend, either on the couch or if anybody's around and wants to watch with yours truly, shoot me a DM or something and we can make that happen.
Yeah, I will actually not be around. I will be watching from the Great White North. I will be in Ottawa on Sunday, so I'll be watching from there.
Ooh, an Iowa Rough Rider game, by any chance? Or?
No. It's actually an Alouette Red Blacks game.
You throw the record books out the window and those two get together, Grump.
I'm going for a friend's birthday. It's not a big deal. Anyway, cleaning up anything from this week before we get into that matchup. Anything from the Washington game that we didn't cover? I know that was like an hour-long thing we went through, but it did kind of feel a little bit like we were just at a loss and kind of rambling a little bit there. Did anything that we didn't really say, didn't want to say?
No, the only thing I did want to bring up a little bit was, and I understand your theme of this team is, we did load up. We spent most of our off season trying to make the offense better, and you were more hyped this season about we need to score touchdowns. That's going to be a sign of progress. And we didn't really address the defense as much. So who cares about the defense necessarily in relative terms? But I do want to bring up one point, though, is that we did go out and get Brian Burns, and we got him at a pretty considerable cost. There was draft capital. We signed him to a big contract, which is going to take a nice chunk out of the salary cap. And to this point, he has been underwhelming at best. So I do want to say that, I completely get what you're saying about, this team. The only way this team is going to escape being the mediocrity and being one of the worst teams in the league is we got to start scoring points. We got to start scoring touchdowns. And we tried to do that, with a top 10 pick and making the offensive line better. But Brian Burns was a big investment. And to this point, like most Knowles, he has let me down.
Yeah, I don't really have too much of a rebuttal of that. We'll start with Brian Burns in and of himself. It's not really a secret, but we haven't really discussed it too much on this show. So, yeah, the edges have disappointed. And in this scheme where we're not going to be blitzed, Shane Bowen blitzed a bit against Jaden Daniels. That's an inexperienced quarterback that is kind of set up in a system in year one to kind of like make quick decisions. And if it's not there, figure something out. You know what I mean? So this was designed to attack specifically that. Normally, Bowen is not going to bring 5 guys. So it is imperative that the edges get there. And through 2 weeks, they have underwhelmed. Now, they showed up quite a bit more week 2 than week 1, but they also played a much shittier team. Just right on the offensive line, the 2 tackles are just not that good. So you're not wrong. Like for what we've invested in Brian Burns, that was really the one solid investment that they made this offseason for the defense. We haven't really seen the return we were hoping for. Now, to my thesis on what I'm grading this team on, you have guys at 3 levels that departed. You lost Adoree Jackson, and you lost Adoree Jackson, you reclaimed him, but you lost a cornerback 2, which was actually the acting cornerback 1 last year. Now, however he decided to play is sort of, up for debate, whether he lived up to that billing or if he played more like a corner 2 or if he played more like somebody who should be riding the pine. That's neither here nor there. When they went into the 2023 season, they felt like they were set with Jackson as corner one, and Deonte Banks was going to have to hold his own as a rookie as cornerback two. We knew that Adoree Jackson, at the beginning of 2023, we knew that Adoree Jackson was probably walking or would need to be re-signed. We knew that cornerback two was going to be a hole going into this. So that's one guy that left. We lost a Xavier McKinney on the back end, which we addressed via the draft, which is a half measure in terms of the immediate future. You get a second round pick. You're kind of hoping that he can hang as a starter in his first year. And then you had 2 defensive tackles walk, or just one. A'Shawn Robinson walks. Well, I guess 2 if you want to consider Leonard Williams.
I was going to say, yeah.
Before, yeah.
Right, we've never replaced him at all. And and now that's to me, it's small sample size of only 2 games. That has been the biggest impact that, that's not been addressed is, inside.
Right.
The ability teams have run against it.
Well, the inside has been not addressed whatsoever. The cornerback and the safety has been addressed through what I would consider the short-term half measures, through draft pieces, right? So to my thesis as to the defense, I stand by it. Brian Burns is the sole true investment that was made in the short term for the defense, and he has underachieved. So I think both things are correct.
Sure. And something in this world, whether it's sports, religion, politics, whatever, multiple things can be true at once. I try not to live my life with binary things. So just to say, well, this hasn't happened, that doesn't mean other things will happen too. So, my life advice to everybody this week is try not to live your life in binary things. 2 things can be true at once.
The only other note I have from last week is, and this is something that I've seen kind of around, the opinion that, it really wasn't too outlandish for the Giants to take Graham Gano's injury, the groin, which was later a hamstring, which is what kept him out of the game. Just the way they handled that was that simply I've seen this around, that never seen a team carry 2 kickers, and that's kind of fair. On the 53-man roster having 2 kickers on there. I've also never seen a team for 2 weeks straight not have 53 players on the roster. So I mean, it's a little bit irrelevant, whether or not it's weird to have 2 kickers or over precautionary when you have the empty roster spot to do it. So
this is a team that's gonna if they're gonna win, they're gonna win on the margins. They're gonna have to be a little smarter, coach a little better, be a little more creative. So just because that's the way things were, and if you knew he had issues before, and you have somebody on the practice squad, he may not be ideal, but if I can't kick a 26-yard field goal, why is that guy even on the practice squad? Is he learning how to kick? Is he learning how to swing his leg through a ball? So that is it's just a fuck up that just cost us a game. Yeah. And in a season where there are no games to give away.
I think that's more the thing. Like, if you want to roll the dice on a kick, but this is a bad team that needs to score points, and kickers score points. You know what I mean? So that's really where I land with it. I know special teams is not that important, X, Y, and Z, but kickers score points. This is a team that needs its players to score points. There's no backup plan. If the backup plan is a guy who doesn't play the position at all, then that's not a viable backup plan, in my opinion. That's all.
Nope. Agreed.
It's perfectly fair to be like, who the hell carries 2 kickers on a roster? Perfectly fair. If this were a better team, I think maybe you just rest him and put him on IR and sign another kicker for 4 weeks. Someone to just cash a couple of paychecks. But
ultimately, what did we do?
and that's really where we land. And that's kind of the only news from this week is the Giants signed Greg Joseph from the Minnesota Vikings practice squad. Just a couple quick stats on him. In 2023, he went 24 of 30 which is 80%. He had a long of 54 yards. 2022, he went 26 of 33, which is 79%, with a long of 61. And in 2021, he went 33 of 38, which is 87%, with a long of 55. He's a kicker. That's basically what I get out of that. He's a competent kicker.
Yep. Someone will, fill the void until Gano gets back.
Yeah,
that's all we need.
In other injury news, it looks like otherwise the Giants are fairly healthy. It looks like Isaiah Simmons missed practice, but it was not injury related, so he should be back. Nick McLeod did not practice again with the knee. But Darius Muasau looks like he is moving along with his knee. He was limited. Kayvon Thibodeau showed up as limited on with a shoulder injury, but I don't think that there's a chance in hell that he loses any reps or anything like that. Giants seem like they're fairly healthy going into this.
Yeah, good. we need all hands on deck.
On the flip side, Cleveland, it couldn't be a more different story. They've been hurt thus far. Nick Chubb is on the PUP list, so he is not going to be around for this game. Guys who didn't practice: Myles Garrett, David Njoku, DeJuan Jones, Pierre Strong. None of these guys practiced. The ones that I really think aren't going to play are Strong and Njoku. I really don't know if Njoku's going to make this game. He's got an ankle. DeJuan Jones may be a backup, but he is a backup. He's an important backup. He's a tackle. I think Myles Garrett plays this game, right?
I would think, as you said in the same breath, there's no way Thibodeau's not playing. I think the same thing about him.
But they're not limited to just that. The guys who were limited in practice: Zadarius Smith with a back issue, Denzel Ward has a shoulder, Jedrick Wills has a knee. They're banged up all over the place. This is usually the Giants story. I'm usually having to write out all this fucking injuries and keep track of them all. This is now the story for Cleveland right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That could color a lot of their early season unimpressiveness. They got waxed by Dallas. They didn't look that good against Jacksonville last week. When you don't have a full boat, these things are going to happen.
I'll kind of disagree. So I watched the Jacksonville game. I watched the. Well, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with your overall point, but they did get their clocks cleaned by Dallas in week 1. Week 1 can mean absolutely nothing, though. Mm-hmm. So I try not to lose my mind over, unless it's the Giants. I try not to lose my mind over week 1 stuff. So I tried to really focus on week 2. And here's what I came away with here. And I don't know, maybe I'm nuts. Is Jacksonville just horrible? That game looked like it was over at halftime. Jacksonville didn't look like they could get a first down. And Trevor Lawrence looked absolutely positively shook. He was missing guys over the top. Whenever he was hitting wide open guys, they were dropping the ball. Evan Ingram didn't play in the game, but that's usually his MO, was dropping the ball. I'm starting to get the sense, not to go too far off this cliff here, but I'm starting to get the sense that the Trevor Lawrence-Doug Peterson relationship in Jacksonville, that whole thing looks like it's about to fall out from underneath them, right?
If you've been listening to this show since day one, who has been one of the biggest Doug Peterson detractors there is?
Oh, it's been you, yeah.
Me. I've never thought he was a good coach. I thought he was a buffoon. I remember, and I told this story before, driving somewhere and listening to WIP after an Eagle loss, and they wanted to crucify the guy. And that was like a year or two before the Super Bowl. So I've never been a fan of that guy. I just think some coaches are just not good coaches. And I think he is one of them. And it's too bad for Jacksonville because we talk about Daniel Jones has not been put into the best position to succeed. Look what he's had to deal with the last, since he's been in the league. Yeah, who could even make it a year? Doug Peterson, to your point, there's been rumblings that they're not the best of, they don't play well in the sandbox together. So, yeah, I can certainly see that.
Urban Meyer didn't even make it out of Ohio.
He didn't make it out of that seat where he's getting his lap dance from.
Yeah. What's interesting about this, too, is perhaps, because you have Jim Schwartz is now the defensive coordinator for Cleveland. Mm-hmm. You have that familiar relationship with Doug Peterson. Maybe he just knows how to attack a Peterson offense. I'm not really sure. But that game, to me, looked like it was just positively over at halftime. Yeah. So...
I know we want to segue into Jim Schwartz and familiarity. He's got familiarity with our coaching staff. And I think Jim Schwartz is getting to be one of those guys who I compare to Norv Turner or Wade Phillips.
Oh, where he's just a career coordinator.
He's just a good coordinator, but he's a terrible head coach, and he's going to keep getting opportunities and failing miserably. But then he falls back into these, good situations and does what he does best, and is coordinate. And I think he's definitely on that list.
So let's get into that. Let's get into the good situations here. Cleveland, to me, they look pretty stacked in the right spots, right? You have some really talented edge rushers with Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith. You have really talented guys in the back end like Denzel Ward. To me, their strength is the pass rush in their secondary. And Jim Schwartz is a 4-3 rush 4 kind of guy. And he'll send blitzes for sure, but generally speaking, he wants to win with his front four. But where I look at this, where Cleveland might be a little bit weak here, is they just look a little bit soft in the middle. And I think that if you were going to play this game, and I feel like I'm going to keep hammering this point, but I don't mean to be like, I'm not like this guy, but when I look at what the Giants have as a roster and what the Cleveland has as a defense, I think the best way to start this game is to continue riding Devin Singletary, who looked outstanding last week. You have the one fumble, but if you erase the fumble, like it, not just the stats, actually watching what he was doing. If you need, so the reason that Jacksonville game was over at halftime is because after halftime, all Jim Schwartz had to do was pin ears back and rush. And at that point, Trevor Lawrence was just getting demolished. There was a safety late in that game. It was absolutely horrible. If you want to avoid that scenario, keep the pass rush honest. You have to be able to run. And our run blocking, our running back, everything looks like it is working correctly. Keep riding that because you need to soften up that middle. You need to keep the pass rushers from just being able to pin their ears back and go. And you need defensive back. I think you just need to hit that middle of the field. You need to just hit the tight ends over the top. After that, you keep hitting that middle of the field because I don't think deep is going to work unless the quick hitters start working. And I don't think the quick hitters are going to start working until if the defensive backs can just drive downhill on everything. If we're running routes that are under 10 yards consistently, then they're just going to trigger and go. Like you're not going to be able to get the slant and go route if the pass rushers can just pin their ears back. So everything hinges on them not doing what they are designed to do as a defense, in my opinion.
And to be very honest, the best looking unit on this team so far after 2 games has been our running offense.
I agree.
The passing offense is the defense has all sorts of problems, special teams, obviously, with the injuries and everything. But the best thing that's looked, and I will give credit because I was not impressed in the offseason and was worried about the offensive line run blocking. And to this point, they have held their own. I think Motor's done more, with what he has. I'm more impressed with him and his individual effort than I am as a unit run blocking, but that's great. That's been, I think, my biggest pleasant surprise on this team so far this year.
Yeah, it looks like maybe that Brasillo hire was, or just getting veterans to supplement the.
Well, remember now, 50% of what we've seen so far has been against Washington.
That's a good point. Yep.
We are going to have a serious upgrade in class starting with this week and moving forward. So, cautious optimism. But let's see how this plays out against real competition.
And to your point, last week was against Washington. Look, if the defensive game plan has anything, I don't even know if this is something that's game specific. They just need to play better. You know what I mean? And they have to take the advantages where they show up. There's just no excuse. You're not going to win any games playing defense the way that they played last week. None. Zero. Absolutely none. But you have a completely different situation. Deshaun Watson is not going to be fooled the way that Jaden Daniels is. So the rush has to get there organically. We can't be rushing 5 constantly. He will pick apart. He will understand the blitzes where they're coming from, and he will know exactly where to throw against it. This isn't going to work. What we were saying at the top here with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, they need to be Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau because it can't just be Dexter Lawrence. The interior here is pretty good. They need to take advantages where they're going to present themselves. Jack Conklin is a great right tackle, but he is not the fastest out of the box. You have 2 really speedy edge rushers with Brian Burns, who has one of the best bends in the league right now. And you have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's got some good hand fighting, and he's got good speed off the snap. And then you have Jedrick Wills at left tackle, who's a very solid left tackle, but is a little bit hobbled right now. And maybe you can take advantage of that with some bull rushes or something. Just make him feel uncomfortable on that knee.
So let's assess Deshaun Watson for a minute, and let's get past the contract. Let's get past everything. Let's get past the noise about
The
him.
massages.
We'll never get past that. But I'm just saying, like, Deshaun Watson, competitor we're facing on Sunday, what is your take on him? Is he truly the worst quarterback in the league? Is he a guy that's just, it's between the ears right now a problem? What do you see in him? And, we are an elixir for bad quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks to suddenly look like all pros. What exactly is he to you?
Um, Coming out of school, I was a little worried about his mental makeup in terms of how much he was able to, because Clemson sort of ran a weird read at half the field kind of offense at the time.
Makes your quarterbacks look great, and that may or may not be lead to Trevor Lawrence, but fair point.
True. So I was a little worried about that, and as he's been in this league and his time with Houston, he has stepped up to the plate, and I think that he is an intelligent, smart quarterback. He can make all the throws. He is mobile enough. In college he's super mobile, but going to the NFL, he is not that guy anymore. But he is elusive. He's a problem. He keeps his eyes downfield when he moves out of the pocket too. Good pocket movement. He's a problem. He's someone you have to game plan against. Right now, what might be his issue is, he's dealing with a lot. He has been dealing with a lot off the field. There's some wacky things that, I've come across on the internet where it may be true, it may not be true, but it appears that there is a burner account defending him. And
Watson 103.
No, I forget what it is. If I can find the screenshot, I'll put it up on the screen right there. But someone criticized Deshaun Watson, and he says, "You don't know me," kind of like blew his own cover. But that doesn't necessarily mean it actually is him. That could be any asshole on the internet, whatever. But the point to that is, I think right now he's a little bit lost in the nonsense. It's not all football for him. He's getting a little caught up in things that should not concern him. He should be, focused a little bit more on the game. Week 1 he looked bad. Week 2 he looked good. I'm not mentally built to be a quarterback in the NFL, just in terms of
physically either.
No, but I mean, I don't have the mentality where, if I don't have the confidence level to be if I played badly, if people are talking endless shit about me on a 24-hour news cycle, I can't handle something like that. So when I say this kind of thing, maybe his weaknesses right now are mental. I'm not trying to be overly critical, I could do any better. I certainly can't.
Well, of course
this would get in my feelings about whatever. But sure. I think that's right now, whatever his issues are, I think it's that. It's between the ears, but it's not intelligence. It's emotional, mental strength, if you will.
I mean, it's the same thing Daniel Jones. People are criticizing him for the same thing. It's a lot of it's in between the ears at this point, and it's a confidence thing. That's, I don't care how, you could be the most confident person on the planet. You're always going to have moments of self-doubt. And, what you think you do best in, if you're not doing it to your best, you're going to doubt yourself at some level. The Michael Jordans of the world, they can compartmentalize and ignore it. But, how many of those are on the world? 3. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of this is self-induced, so I'm not giving him a pass for any of this, but he is in a world where he's got a lot going on, and new things seem to come up every day with him. It's quite frankly, it's amazing. It's amazing he's still in the league.
That's true.
It's amazing that a team, after all this stuff has gone on, said, not only do I want to trade for you, I am going to give you one of the worst contracts in NFL history. But the siren call of talent is always there, and people think they can fix. And, what's going to happen, of course. We're going to be on this show Monday night talking about, the Deshaun Watson game and how he made himself better and, all that. So
Deshaun P. Diddy Watson.
Leroy Bickerstaff X,
yes,
for those of you looking.
Yes, that was the burner account.
I think that was the neighbor in Good Times, Leroy Bickerstaff, but I don't know.
But as far as the defense goes outside of Deshaun Watson, they need to take advantage. We stated that this is a really injured team. They need to take advantage of the fact that Nick Chubb is not playing. They need to take advantage of the fact that if David Njoku plays, he will not be 100%. Linebackers and safeties, they're going to have to assist in coverage. They need to stop the run. They need to stop the run. They need to assist in coverage. If they're not worried about covering Njoku in the middle of the field, they need to stop the run and they need to help against Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and Eli Moore and Cedric Tillman, if whatever. But I mean, you have Deontay Banks is probably going to be following Amari Cooper across the field. He's going to need help over the top with that. You have Adoree Jackson and Drew Phillips trying to control Jerry Jeudy and Eli Moore. They really need to take the fact that David Njoku is not going to be there and Nick Chubb is not going to be there. They need to win on those two things. They need to have that middle of the field be stopping the run and helping against the pass. And
your prediction.
Well, so this was our prediction way back in June. The Giants are traveling to Cleveland for week 3 for a 1 o'clock matchup against the Cleveland Browns, who found their way ass forwards into the playoffs with Joe Flacco at the helm. That will not be the case this year. I assume Deshaun Watson is clear to play right away. So, Cranky fan, give me your thoughts on a week 3, 1 o'clock matchup at the Cleveland Browns.
This might be the first time I pull out the magic marker and loss, because I think there's no way we're going in there and winning. Second week in a row on the road, hostile crowd. I think Cleveland. I feel like they're kind of one of those teams where people are going to get very excited about. I can't see us going in there, and winning. I just don't think we're good enough. Very honestly, I think Deshaun Watson, the first of my bold predictions, is going to have one of those. Oh, this is what Deshaun Watson could have been type. His career could have been a game like this type of game. I just feel a more elusive, a better running version of what we saw the previous week. And I think he puts up some gaudy all-purpose yardage numbers against us. And I just don't see us winning there. I have it as a loss in pen.
When I look at this Cleveland Brown teams, I'm not really sure how they were so goddamn good last year. I just don't know. I don't know what I'm looking at on a roster sheet, on a depth chart that's just like, oh, I get it. Like, when I look at this matchup, I'm not really too worried. I mean, I'm worried about everything with the Giants. So, like, it has nothing to do with... I don't think the Giants are better, but I think that this is a well-coached team, and I think this is a very experienced, knowledgeable quarterback. David Njoku is something. Nick Chubb is something. Amari Cooper. These are people.
Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy. I think the most important thing is that this is a team that is going, a defense that is still going to be figuring out their feet. There are experience holes, especially in the defensive backfield, right? And I think an experienced quarterback like Deshaun Watson will know exactly how to pick apart that defense. If he doesn't figure out in the film room and he doesn't figure it out in the first quarter, after a couple of drives, he'll figure out what they're doing that he can exploit. And I actually, I think that the Giants are going to come to this game to play, especially after losing to the Commanders the week before. I think that they're going to be in this one, but I feel like this is a heartbreak loss because of some stupid fumble or a missed field goal or something. This just feels like a heartbreak loss to me. All right, so why don't you give me your prediction first?
Looking for that magic marker I referenced and see if I can pull that out, because quite frankly, this New York Football Giant team is magic marker loss worthy until I'm proven otherwise. The fact that we were so bad against the run last week absolutely terrifies me for the rest of this season. And yes, they have to play better. They have to be coached better. They have to execute better. And it starts with controlling the line of scrimmage. And Dexter Lawrence cannot play every single snap. And the problem is, as soon as he's off the field, this team looks like a sieve. And I don't know how that gets fixed. I alluded to it before. This has all the earmarks of have the backup quarterback, have the quarterback that's catching shit, have the quarterback that hasn't been playing well, suddenly look fantastic against a team that's struggling. And I think that's going to happen again here. I think I said it word for word in the preseason preview. I don't see any way we can win this game there. I think we are going to get rolled something like 31-10. I think this team is going to once again struggle to have possessions, and that time possession thing was an absolute killer list. I think it's going to happen again this week. And I just think we're going to struggle having drives and having opportunities to score. So I think it's going to be bad.
Jim Schwartz said to the media, starting 0-1 forces you to address your problems. And I agree with that. I think that the offense looked like absolute garbage for the Giants in week 1, and they addressed those problems. The offense, again, against Washington, but still, the offense looked like a competent NFL offense in very, very limited time of possession in week 1. It's time for the defense to take 0-2 and do something about it also. In terms of my prediction from before, I had predicted that we'd lose to Washington in a heartbreak way back in June, but not quite the heartbreak I was anticipating watching. In this game, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be afraid of. I think there's plenty to be afraid of here. I don't know what pot I was smoking that day. I'll have to figure that out.
For your Patreon viewers, yeah. We'll have that list later.
I'll have to check the receipt, because that seemed to be a good moment for me. I was feeling good. This seems like a mess to me. I can't, until I see the defense stop the run, I can't stop thinking about how we couldn't do anything against the run last week. It's hard for me to think of anything else. I do think that there was, some of the things I was worried about aren't going to happen. Like David Njoku, I seriously don't think is going to play in this game. I think if you're Cleveland, you look at this game and go, do we really need to re-injure David Njoku to play the Giants at home? Nick Chubb is not going to play in this game, so nothing to worry about there. I don't think the score accurately represents what this game will look like for us. I think that late field goals, will make this a one-score game, but I think this will be mostly blown up because, again, they didn't really blow out Jacksonville last week on the scoreboard, but the game at no point looked close.
It felt heavily tilted on their side.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be kind of the same thing in this game. I think that we lose to the tune of 27-20. Like I said, 2 late field goals make that seem a lot closer, but they're garbage time field goals. If we kick the second one with only a minute left, we're really clinging to hope that we're going to stop their offense.
Two touchdowns is, we're looking at this in terms of touchdowns, I think, is how we grade this offense, and that's 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
And that's not going to cut it in this league.
No. And sadly, that would be, more than we had a lot of last year, but not last week. Yeah, I'm worried really about the defense. I think the offense could maybe do something, but if the offense can't do anything right away, I'm seriously worried about Daniel Jones's health. If you have a quarterback just taking hit after hit by halftime the way Trevor Lawrence was, you have to worry about the whole season. And, say what you will about Daniel Jones, whatever, like that, I'm not going down that road. It's a bad thing when your starting quarterback is injured. End of story. So
we've lived through it the last several years, and we all know what that's like. We don't have amnesia.
Yeah. So I thought that this game was going to be a loss and heartbreak. I think this is actually going to be, with a couple more months of information, I think that this is not going to be a heartbreak. I think our hearts will be ripped out of our chests somewhere in the mid-second quarter.
I feel like a Tin Man already, Grump.
Spinning around the league, Washington is playing Sunday night, I think, or Monday night against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. How does the Cranky fan feel about that?
I think Cincinnati gets well. I think I think Washington, we saw probably their best effort of the year, and it was against a very bad Giant team. And they kicked 7 field goals. That's the truth. I mean,
you stated only facts, but
only facts. But it's the honest truth that you may not see a better effort from Washington this entire year. You might see, the quarterback getting better and better as he gets more practice experience. But as a collective unit, that was their best punch, and they kicked 7 field goals. I think they get their asses kicked.
I think that at the end of this year, actually before the end of this year, the national media's take on Cincinnati is going to be: were we wrong about Joe Burrow? Were we wrong about this team? I don't think it will be fair to Joe Burrow, but I think this is an organization that, from the moment they had success with Joe Burrow, they have not addressed any of the weaknesses of the team. They have not fixed the offensive line. They have not fixed the defense. They are just going to live and die with Joe Burrow getting drilled play after play. And it's going to be on him and Jamar Chase to figure shit out. They look like a mess to me. Nevertheless, you stated only facts. The Giants was the Commanders' best chance to win a game, and they did win it, but to the tune of 7 field goals. I think there's no shot in hell Washington goes to Cincinnati and wins this game. Cincinnati wins.
It's a nice potential survivor pick.
Dallas is hosting Baltimore on the heels of one of the worst losses I've ever seen. Alvin Kamara with 4 touchdowns in that game. How do you think Dallas fares at home against the Baltimore Ravens?
What is Dallas?
What has Dallas ever been? But
yeah, I mean, is Dallas that the team that looked fantastic against Cleveland in week 1, or the team that's just completely shit the bed at home in week 2? I think they are more like the team from week 2. I think Baltimore goes in and wins.
I think you're right. I think they are closer to the week 2 team than they are the week 1 team. I think that Baltimore is also trying to figure out some of their own shit. I think also it's just kind of hard to play at AT&T Stadium.
Is it? I mean, think about it. That place, it's big, but it's one of those places kind of like Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, where you get a lot of people who want to go as a destination for away fans. And there's always a lot of away fans. So the crowd doesn't, and you've been there, it doesn't seem like that place is impossible to play.
It's not impossible. I would not say that it's harder to play there. I mean, I've never played in an NFL stadium, so anything I say is all conjecture, but I wouldn't say it's harder than playing in New Orleans. I wouldn't say it's harder than playing in Seattle or Kansas City or maybe even Philly. Or New England, I think, might be a difficult place to play from time to time. But I don't think that it's easy. I mean, it holds... Is it the highest capacity stadium in the league with standing room?
I believe it. With standing room, it absolutely is.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is that. It's early in the season, so it's prime Cowboys hype. You know what I mean? Like, this is where Cowboys fans are the most Cowboy. If it's not the divisional game that they eventually lose. But... yeah, I think that it can be difficult to play there. Now, certainly to your point, it seemed like there were a ton of Saints fans there, but New Orleans is geographically pretty close to Dallas. I don't know how well Ravens fans really travel.
I literally drove it in 2017 to go from a...
what is it, like 8 hours?
It was an all-day drive. We actually went from Baton Rouge to there. It was about 8-9 hours.
Yeah, I mean, Texas is a big-ass state. Austin and Dallas look close on a map, and it's like...
But remember, a lot of Saints fans live up in northern Louisiana. They live up in Lafayette and Monroe, which is considerably closer to Dallas than just New Orleans.
Yeah, I don't know how well Baltimore fans travel, if I'm being honest.
That's a fair point, too.
So... I think that both of these teams are figuring things out. I think this is a close game. I think that Mike McCarthy knows that this... I think he got an earful after the last game, and he knows exactly how hot his seat is. So, I think they're able to do enough to win this game, but I think it's close. It could go either way.
Okay, fair enough.
Ultimately, I agree with you, though. I think Dallas is closer to the team we saw play the Saints, not the team that played Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, Philadelphia is traveling to New Orleans to play the Saints following their collapse at home in their home opener. How do you feel about this game?
Grump, I want to ask you a question because this was unfolding as we were recording on Monday night. The Barkley drop at the end. What was your reaction to that? Were you like, fuck that guy, or fuck the Eagles, or ambivalent?
Saquon Barkley, the person, I could care less. He's a player trying to do his thing. It seems to me that it was a money thing with the Giants. He didn't like the way he was treated in regards to that money. I think stemming from 2023 offseason, not this past one that was hard knocks. But I don't have a problem with a player going for money, especially somebody like Barkley who's had so many injuries in his career. He went to what would be considered a competitor that was still in his near hometown. I don't have a problem with that. I still was like, fuck the Eagles, because them going after Saquon Barkley feels a lot more like trying to screw me than Saquon Barkley.
Which they've been trying to do for a decade.
Yeah, that's, you know what I mean? Like, Barkley going to the Eagles makes more sense from his perspective than not that it doesn't make sense. You know what I'm trying to say. It feels less like a slight when Barkley leaves for a competitor than it does my competitor going after Saquon Barkley for an insane amount of money. So when the egg was on their face, I'm happy to laugh at Eagles fans. Yeah.
I think Saquon's talking a little too much about it. I think he's if we just turn the page and say, hey, what's past is past. I'm an Eagle now. Let's move forward. But he doesn't mind giving the little digs about what they didn't do. And this is a place where I feel it's a little. It's past the point of like okay, I understand business decisions. So like something, fuck you, and he's starting to enter that something's fuck you phase with me. So I got beyond the extra special glee of seeing Philly lose at home. I had a little bit of a smirk after to him.
Well, I mean, again, my smirk goes really to Eagles fans who wanted to throw at my face, about Barkley. It's like he's a really, really good player, and I'll always hype him up. I'll be excited to put the ball in his hands and see what he can do. But he was not Adrian Peterson out there. He just wasn't. Like, he didn't run. He didn't break tackles the way we wanted him to break tackles later on in his career after the injuries. He doesn't. He fumbles the ball in the worst possible moments at times. You know what I mean? Like, not
to your point. To your point
reliable.
With that. To your point for that, ESPN, I'm realizing, just likes to troll everybody. It's not just me and my teams. The stat they had right after the game was over, Eagles lose. Saquon Barkley leads all running backs in drop passes since 2019. And like that's a dick stat to put up there.
I think it was 2021.
Was it 20? Whatever it was. But the point is, that was a stat that was put up there to troll a fan base. And
100%.
But it's also like a theme of the show, facts.
Yeah, I mean
it's
a fact
about.
But I mean, it's pure numbers. It's not percentage. So, he's a running back that gets thrown the ball a lot more. He was on a bad team, so he was the star player. So it's easy to key in on him. So he probably had guys bearing down on him more often than other running backs trying to catch passes. There's a lot of context missing there. Also, you didn't pick 2021 by accident. You picked that year because that's where he is the one who leads the league in drops.
Well,
if you include his whole career, maybe he doesn't. I don't fucking know.
That's this week's episode of Fun with Filters by doing that too. But you're trying to, you have a conclusion and you need to build a fact base around that conclusion.
Correct.
So that's all that is. But still, it was just funny that ESPN decided to put that stat on there at that moment.
Agreed. So how do you feel about Philly traveling to New Orleans on the heels of that game?
I feel like they're going to lose. We said in the offseason, we thought that the Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni partnership might be in trouble already, that they don't like each other. And I think a loss like last week, that lights the match. And going into we last segment, we just said some stadiums are harder than others. New Orleans is not an easy place to play. And the Eagles are a very hateable team by the rest of the league. I think that's a fired up Cajun crowd. And I think New Orleans wins. And I think you're going to start hearing the hot seat Sirianni. Here's my bold prediction. After next week, I think Sirianni's on a hotter hot seat than Brian Daboll is for sure.
Very interesting. I think they're going to lose as well. New Orleans is a top 5 hard place to play. I think you are coming off the heels of the win they just had. I think it's going to be one of the louder New Orleans crowds unless the Eagles can suck the air out of the room immediately.
And also, let me ask you something, Grump, just between me and you, since no one's probably listening anyway. Did Jalen Hurts just suck?
I think he has weaknesses that Nick Sirianni has not been able to address or otherwise cover up. to your point about Nick Sirianni, being on a hot seat, or the relationship falling apart with him and Jalen Hurts, I think that Nick Sirianni is a person who understands what needs to be done, and he was very good at hiring coaches, but he has been able to, like, the success early on had all to do with the overpowering roster he was dealt and the coaches he had. When both coaches left, there was a huge drop off. We're not seeing any improvement based off of that. Some of the younger guys that were brought in to replace the older veterans like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, they're not developing into those guys. Lane Johnson is now starting to get old. He's not been able to develop talent the way I think you'd want him to. He's not been able to work around Jalen Hurts' inability to read defenses. So yeah, I don't think Jalen Hurts sucks. He's certainly better than Daniel Jones. I'd take him.
Well, that's quite a low bar. I mean, but still, like, they've been able to exploit one thing that they do really, really well, and it changes everything about what they're trying to do, because they basically can play a 4-down series, knowing they're going to get the first down if it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 1.5 or something. And if you take away that ability to have that one special thing that no one can either replicate or stop, what does this offense actually do? What do they do well?
I mean, he throws a good deep ball. So if the coverage is there, he understands what is in front of him, then he can make the right throws. He's elusive. He's also, as a runner, just difficult to bring down, even if he's not the fastest running quarterback in the league. He's hard to tackle. So I mean, like, the offense has its horses, but if the whole league knows your weaknesses and you don't have an answer for that, then that is what it is. So
that's kind of it, because it doesn't feel to me like an offense anymore that I'm scared of. I mean, if I'm the Giants, I'm frightened because I'm scared of playing against
my own shadow.
You and your two sisters. But no, it's just not an offense that just scares me like it did a couple of years back.
And that's the NFC East in a weekend. So we will see you guys on Tuesday morning, as always, in our usual spots: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. So be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and at Just Giants Pod. And until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.